There was something different about day 3. Not just in the throws, not just in the completion percentages, not just in the way the ball was coming out of his hands with that kind of velocity and precision that makes defensive coordinators quietly rethink their entire game plan. It was something deeper than that, something you could feel even through a phone screen watching grainy OTA footage. The coaches weren't giving polite applause and going home. Offensive coordinators were sitting bolt upright, like someone had zapped their chairs with live electricity. And the reason was simple: uncomfortable for some, and impossible to ignore for everyone else. Shedeur Sanders was not playing like a rookie quarterback who came to Cleveland to learn. He was playing like a quarterback who came to take something. And after 3 days of organized team activities, the story that the national media had already written, packaged, and shipped out to the public was starting to fall apart at the seams. But before we get into what happened on that field, we need to talk about the narrative that existed before any of this started, because context here is everything, and without understanding just how locked in that original story was, you can't fully appreciate how remarkable this shift actually is. Months before Shedeur Sanders ever walked through the doors of the Browns facility, the national media had already decided how this was going to go. The story was clean, simple, and convenient. Deshaun Watson was the proven veteran, the safe choice, the guy with the guaranteed money, the starting pedigree, and the organizational investment that comes with a fully guaranteed contract that still makes accountants physically uncomfortable to look at. Watson was QB1. That was the story. It wasn't presented as speculation. It wasn't framed as one possibility among several. It was delivered to the public as settled fact, the kind of thing reporters say with the confidence of someone who has inside information and wants you to know it. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders was being typecast before he ever took a single NFL snap. The rookie project, the guy who needed time, the quarterback who should be spending his Sundays on the sideline with a headset nearly the size of a satellite dish, absorbing information, keeping his mouth shut, and waiting patiently for his moment somewhere down the road. Reports coming out of the earliest parts of the offseason were framing Watson as the definitive leader of the competition. People were talking about Shedeur like he was years away from being a serious conversation in the NFL, let alone in Cleveland specifically. And that framing was everywhere. Sports talk shows, insider reports, social media takes, all reinforcing the same idea. Watson leads, Sanders waits. Story over. The problem with that narrative? Somebody apparently forgot to tell Shedeur Sanders that he was supposed to wait his turn. When OTAs opened up and Shedeur actually stepped onto the field, something was immediately off about the script. Not off in a bad way, off in the way that makes coaches put down their coffee and actually watch. Because Shedeur Sanders did not look like a rookie quarterback trying to survive his first exposure to an NFL practice environment. He looked comfortable, settled, like a guy who'd been running this offensive system longer than the calendar suggested was possible. The small things stood out first, and that matters because the small things are exactly what coaches are watching for. It's easy to make a flashy throw in shorts and a t-shirt. Anybody can look good in a low-pressure practice setting when there's no real consequence for a bad decision. What coaches are actually evaluating in those early sessions is the technical foundation, the footwork coming out of the drops, the timing of the release, the way a quarterback sets his base before the ball leaves his hand, the rhythm between the snap and the decision. These are the details that coaches lose sleep over, rewinding game film at 2 in the morning with lukewarm coffee sitting nearby, because they tell you more about a quarterback's long-term potential than any individual throw ever could. And by every account coming out of Cleveland, Shedeur Sanders was checking those boxes in a way that quietly started turning heads. Not in a dramatic way at first, not in a way that immediately blew up headlines, but in the steady, consistent way that makes football people lean forward in their chairs and start paying closer attention. And then the completion percentages started coming in, and suddenly the conversation wasn't so quiet anymore. By the end of day 2, Shedeur was completing passes at a better rate than Watson. And before anyone tries to dismiss that by saying it was against softer assignments or simplified drills, Understand that both quarterbacks were operating against the same defensive schemes, the same disguised coverages, the same pressure packages, the same defense that was working every single day to make quarterbacks' lives as miserable as possible. Equal conditions, different results. And the results were not supposed to look like this. Then came day 3. And if days 1 and 2 created quiet intrigue inside the facility, day 3 turned that intrigue into a widespread, unavoidable, impossible-to-dismiss conversation about the entire quarterback battle in Cleveland. The throws on day 3 looked like something out of a video game trailer. Not in the exaggerated way people say that to hype up a highlight reel, in the specific, technical way where you watch a throw and immediately understand why the coaching staff started giving this kid meaningful first-team repetitions. High-velocity completions over the middle, where the ball had to be delivered on the exact right trajectory, or a safety was going to deliver a punishing hit on the receiver. Deep sideline throws with so much touch and precision that the football appeared to have its own guidance system built in. Throws over defenders where Shedeur was reading the receiver's break before the receiver had even fully turned his head, releasing the ball with anticipation timing that usually takes quarterbacks several years of NFL experience to develop. But more than any individual throw, the thing that caught the most attention was the release speed. The ball was coming out of Shedeur's hands so quickly that defenders were still processing the coverage by the time the pass was already on its way to the receiver. And that is not a small thing in the NFL. That is not a minor technical detail that only film junkies care about. Release speed in this league is everything because defenses at this level are elite at exploiting hesitation. Hold the ball a half second too long and a defensive lineman who runs a 4.640 is already in your face. Release it on time, on rhythm, with anticipation, and suddenly that entire defensive scheme becomes significantly less threatening. Shedeur was doing exactly that, play after play. Not just the spectacular ones that ended up on social media, all of them. And that consistency is what really matters, because anyone can make one great throw in practice. The quarterbacks who actually earn starting jobs in this league are the ones who string together quality decisions repeatedly, under pressure, against competition that is actively trying to make them look bad. Now, here is where Todd Monken becomes a critical part of this story, because what a head coach says publicly during a quarterback competition tells you an enormous amount about what is actually happening behind the scenes. And Monken has not been talking about Shedeur Sanders the way coaches talk about developmental projects who are just trying to stay on the roster. Most coaches are extremely tight-lipped during quarterback competitions. They give the carefully worded answers that reveal nothing, protect everyone's feelings, and generate zero useful information for the outside world. That is standard operating procedure, because the moment a coach tips his hand publicly, the media narrative runs with it, and suddenly the competition has a predetermined outcome before the football has actually decided anything. Coaches with experience know this. They protect information the way people protect their phone passwords. So when Monken starts publicly praising Shedeur's grasp of the offensive system, his processing speed at the line of scrimmage, his comfort level with the playbook, and the confidence he's displaying in real competitive situations, that is not nothing. That is a coach who is watching something on the field that he genuinely cannot keep to himself, because what he's seeing is too real to bury under generic coach speak. NFL playbooks are not simple documents. They are closer to advanced calculus mixed with airport security instructions. Learning protections, route adjustments, defensive checks, hot reads, blitz recognition, timing concepts, and about 100 other things that have to happen in the quarterback's brain within seconds of the snap. There is a reason rookie quarterbacks typically struggle significantly during their first year in the league. The mental processing requirement is genuinely brutal. Veterans who have been in the system for years still make mental errors that cost their teams games. When Monken says Shedeur is picking things up quickly, processing information pre-snap with confidence, and operating within the offensive structure with genuine comfort, that is the coaching equivalent of saying, this guy is doing the hardest, most important things at a level we did not expect this early. And that assessment carries enormous weight, specifically because of who Monken is. This is not a first-year coordinator giving a pep talk to a promising young player after one good practice. This is a man with deep NFL experience who has coached veteran quarterbacks, managed offenses built for deep playoff runs, and seen enough football to know the difference between a player having a good week and a player who is actually developing into something real. And critically, Monken has also been very clear publicly that he never fully bought into the media framing of Watson as the automatic number one. He pushed back on that narrative in a way that was direct enough to be meaningful. He said the competition was open. He said reps would be earned. He said football decisions would not be made based on outside stories. And then he started giving Shedeur Sanders first-team repetitions against top competition. NFL coaching staffs do not hand out first-team reps out of charity. They are not participation trophies. Those snaps are the most valuable commodity in an off-season practice because they determine who is actually being evaluated at the highest level of competition available before the regular season begins. When Shedeur started getting those opportunities, and then kept getting them, and then finished day 3 taking first-team reps for the remainder of practice, the message from the coaching staff was clear to anyone paying close enough attention. There is something else happening in Cleveland that goes beyond the coaching staff's evaluation, something that cannot be measured in completion percentages, or release times, or yards per attempt, something that veteran players understand instinctively and that rookie quarterbacks either have or they don't. The locker room is responding to Shedeur Sanders. NFL locker rooms are not easily impressed. Veteran players have seen too much football, experienced too many cycles of off-season hype followed by regular season disappointment to get excited about a young quarterback just because he made some good throws in shorts and a t-shirt. They're looking for something specific. They want to know if the quarterback believes in himself, not the performance of confidence, not the surface-level bravado that disappears the moment a defense makes a play on him. Real, foundational belief that shows up in body language, in the way he comes out of the huddle, in the sound of his voice at the line of scrimmage when he's making protection adjustments, in the decisiveness of his decisions when things are not going perfectly. Veterans can read all of that within the first week of practices. They've been around enough quarterbacks to know immediately whether the guy running the offense is someone they can trust when the game is on the line. And according to what is coming out of Cleveland, Shedeur Sanders is generating that trust faster than most people anticipated. Reports consistently describe an offense that has rhythm when he's running it. That word, rhythm, matters more than it might seem. A quarterback who truly knows an offensive system creates rhythm because he's making decisions on time, releasing the ball when receivers expect it, and operating with a fluidity that only comes from genuine understanding of the scheme. A quarterback who is just surviving in a system creates hesitation, confusion, and plays that feel slightly off even when they technically work. Shedeur appears to be creating the former. And when the locker room starts to feel that, when veteran players start pointing to a quarterback after successful completions, start communicating with him during practice like he's already earned their respect, that energy builds fast, it compounds, and it becomes very, very difficult for a coaching staff to ignore when they're trying to make the most important personnel decision of the entire offseason. Now, let's talk about the people who spent months telling everyone that this was already decided, because they are in a genuinely uncomfortable position right now, and it is worth acknowledging. The criticism of Shedeur Sanders this offseason was not mild or tentative. It was confident. It was delivered with the certainty of people who had already done the analysis and reached their conclusion. He wasn't ready. The gap between him and a veteran quarterback was too large for a rookie to overcome this early in the process. The competition was effectively a formality. Watson had the experience, the edge, and the organizational backing to be the undisputed starter by the time the regular season began. That was the narrative, and it was pushed hard by enough voices that a lot of people simply accepted it as the most reasonable reading of the situation. 3 days into OTAs, that argument looks considerably more fragile than it did when it was being made so confidently. And the fascinating, somewhat ironic twist is that the criticism itself may have played a role in producing the exact opposite outcome from what the critics predicted. Because Shedeur Sanders plays like someone who uses doubt as fuel. Every time the conversation shifted heavily toward Watson as the presumptive starter, Shedeur showed up the next day looking sharper. Every time a media voice explained confidently why the rookie wasn't ready, Shedeur went out and made throws that required a level of NFL readiness people said he didn't possess yet. Every dismissal seemed to produce a sharper response on the field. That is no coincidence. That is a mentality. And it is the kind of mentality that teams spend years trying to find in a franchise quarterback, because you cannot coach it into someone. Either a player responds to pressure by elevating, or they respond by shrinking. Shedeur Sanders, at least through these early OTA sessions, is responding by elevating, by playing faster, by looking more decisive, by behaving like someone who expected this moment and has been preparing for it quietly while everyone else was busy writing him off.
The people who were most confident this competition was settled are now the same people studying grainy practice footage frame by frame, searching for explanations that make sense of what they're watching. They're dissecting every repetition like it's crucial investigative evidence, debating every throw in comment sections that were not nearly this active a month ago. And the reason is simple. They're watching a tangible, real-time shift happen in front of them, and the story they already told doesn't fit what they're seeing anymore. There are still significant chapters of this story yet to be written. Nobody should pretend otherwise. Training camp is a completely different environment from OTAs. The pads come on, the competition intensifies, defensive schemes become more complex and more deceptive, pressure packages get more creative, and preseason games will matter enormously, because practice statistics and reports are one thing, but actual game situations with real consequence are where quarterbacks prove they can transfer what they do in practice to what actually works on Sundays. Shedeur Sanders has not secured the starting job in Cleveland based on 3 impressive days of organized team activities. That is not how this works. There is a long road ahead, and every quarterback in that room will get their opportunities to make their case as the calendar moves forward. Watson will get his chances too, and the honest reality is that a lot can still change between now and the day the Browns name their starter for Week 1. But here is the thing that cannot be walked back, regardless of what happens next. The timetable has already shifted. The conversation has already changed. The assumption that this competition was a formality, that Shedeur was simply not in the same category as Watson at this stage, that the rookie would spend this year developing quietly in the background. All of that has been directly challenged by what actually happened on the practice field. And once that kind of shift occurs, it doesn't fully reverse itself. The door that Shedeur opened during these 3 days of OTAs is not a door that simply closes because the calendar moved forward. Coaches are watching a quarterback who processes information quickly, operates with confidence at the line of scrimmage, understands the offensive system at a level that surprises people given where he is in his career, and plays with the kind of mental composure under pressure that organizations spend years trying to develop in young quarterbacks. Todd Monken is not talking about Shedeur Sanders the way coaches talk about quarterbacks they are genuinely evaluating for the starting role right now, in real time, based on what the field is telling them. And the field has been very, very loud over these 3 days. So here is the real question heading into the rest of training camp and the preseason. Does Todd Monken follow what the field is telling him, give Shedeur the sustained opportunity he appears to be earning, and let the competition play out the way a true open competition is supposed to? Or does the weight of contracts, front office investment, and organizational expectations quietly reshape this decision in ways that have nothing to do with what happens between the white lines? Because a lot of people were way too quick to write Shedeur off before organized team activities even began. Some had him buried on the depth chart before he'd thrown a single meaningful NFL repetition, and now those same people are watching practice film with the intensity of someone trying to solve a mystery, trying to figure out how this young quarterback keeps making plays that weren't supposed to happen yet.
What do you think happens next? Has Shedeur Sanders done enough in these 3 days to genuinely change the direction of this competition? Or do you think the outside noise, the contracts, the expectations, the organizational politics will eventually pull this decision away from what the field is actually showing? Drop everything in the comments because this quarterback battle is heating up faster than almost anyone expected. And if these first 3 days are any indication of what the rest of training camp is going to look like, this story is only getting started.